Hey guys, so wqqqqwrt here, and I came up with this monster theory that I gotta put out there for the world because it's pretty big, it's pretty revolutionary. Look, I've been searching for an answer for the past since late 2013, so about 3 years now, and I believe this January, this is when it hit me. So yeah, I actually came up with this idea in about January, like right at the tail end of January. It's kind of eye-opening, and I actually PB'd in about a week later in February, about 10 seconds, and then again in mid-March by another 21 seconds. So two kind of big PBs, like right after I came up with this monster killer idea. So I'm gonna let it out there, but a few things I gotta let you know. First of all, ego theory. This is what I've been this is the whole basis of all my ideas, and I came up with this in late 2013, and it's pretty much playing for your ego instead of playing to win, and how people will formulate and change their gameplay in a manner so that it promotes their ego and instead of promoting gameplay. So one classic thing people will do is, and this is actually what I determine, or I see what choking is. What they'll do is they'll devise a system of gameplay that intentionally is shaky and will intentionally lose in tight situations, such as choking. And then when they choke, it's actually to their advantage, because when you choke, you're left with in the mind, you're left with two options. The first option is, I could have done that, I should have done. That's what people always say. I messed up. I should have won that. I should have got a 124 there. I could have got a 124 there, right? And that's kind of poisonous, and that's the problem with choking. And that's what ego theory is at its core. Basically that, because the problem is that's not true. And this is why it benefits their ego, because they either could have succeeded or they did succeed, right? This is the two options in their mind. So either way, it's a win-win, right? It's like an infallible way to only win, but that's not really how reality works. And the reality is, if you didn't choke at that point, it could have continued, it could have gone on, and any possible situation could have come out, right? Any type of gameplay could have came out. You're kind of limited to just either I should have won, or I did win, because if you don't choke, you did win, and that's the problem with the gameplay, right? It's designed, and actually initially back in 2013, I came up with a bunch of examples, and speedrunning, you can see a lot of examples. But in League of Legends, my a good friend of mine, he would go top lane and he'd play really aggressive champs, and he would go all in at level 2, and he would either completely raffle stomp his lane and just carry the game, or he'd get destroyed, right? And this is it's I call it the outplay principle, and this is this ego theory that comes in, where you either dominate them and it's great, or you mess up and, I almost ignited him. If I had ignited him, I would have won that lane, right? See, it's a win-win for the ego, and I determined, or I believe that people actually devise their gameplay in this manner so that they can promote their ego, and there's other ways to do it too. Some people will just endlessly practice, and then they'll never actually do runs, and they'll practice in ways that actually aren't completely suited to doing runs, because if you never do a run, you don't really know what you need to do to practice, right? So how can you, like, what are you even really doing? And that's part of the problem. And they'll go into a run. It looks good, right? It looks really good. Like their movement's really good. They had some pretty good goal segments, but they just can't put it together into a run. And well, why can't they, right? That's the way ego theory is. So the idea is that people design their gameplay around their ego. They don't design it to win. That gets into natural gameplay. So this is what I call it. This is what I found in January. It's absolutely a huge, for me, this natural gameplay is the solution to ego theory, because in the past 3 years of playing League of the Past, for me, it's been a disaster. And actually, ego theory is in itself a part of ego theory, right? I designed this theory in a way that I can explain someone's actions. So I'm either beating somebody or they're beating me, but no matter what, I'm explaining their actions, right? So I always have the upper hand, right? It's designed to fit my ego, and it was for a very long time, and it was it was in its own battle, right? That's what natural gameplay is so powerful, and I actually think that it's part of the reason I don't like talking it up is because, when does it become my ego again? When does natural gameplay become a gimmick? The thing about natural gameplay, and it's the same thing about honesty, is it actually can't be a gimmick, right? Because it's self-defining as not a gimmick. So fortunately, I tried defining natural gameplay, like in my 123 vlog, I got a 123, like how I got a 123. I tried defining what natural gameplay was, and I was kind of like stumbling over my own words, and it didn't really work out. But I thought about it a lot since then, and I came to one conclusion, which I believe natural gameplay it's when what you think you can do is defined not by the results, but it's defined by what you think you can do. And that sounds a little silly, saying it out loud, but basically most people try to define what they can do by the result. And this, if you guys actually probably don't know what input-output theory is, because I never made a vlog on it, but if you know some basic math, or even if you know the words input-output, it's not too hard to grasp. Basically, there's inputs into the gameplay system, right? And then there's outputs, and if you design your gameplay around outputs, that's what that's what the choking is, right? That's what an ego theory is, right? You do something 1,000 times in practice. Oh, I can do it. Obviously I can do it. I can do that 1,000 times in a row. Never nervous, right? Well, that doesn't matter. You can go into a run, go into a PB pace run. If you play Melee, if you play League, well, I guess if you play League, you're probably watching this video. But if you play Melee, and you're in a tournament, and you get real nervous, and then it's like it doesn't matter how many times in friendlies or in practice you did it. Suddenly it's very different, and you can't recreate it in that tournament environment. So it becomes very important to define what you could do by actually what you think you could do, and it goes into practice too. And this is the part I actually stress so much, because I found myself running into this trap in the past 3 years. I never really the problem with my ego theory, the problem with my theories is what is the purpose of them? Okay, I came up with all these ideas, and it makes a lot of sense to me, and it sounds real good. And I mean, mentality, for example, it just never made sense to me, right? So it's I need a solution for this. I need to figure it out. And I came to my own solutions. But, well, where's the practice? The most fundamental solution to the ego theory, to the ego, is to realize, and this is why mentality just flat out doesn't exist. It's all in the gameplay. If you press the right buttons, you win, right? That's all that matters. So where does mentality fit in that? It doesn't fit in at all. It doesn't exist. And it was really easy for me to remember that, but it was hard for me to practice it. And this is where natural gameplay came in. And actually, another thing, if you watch a lot of my vlogs, maybe you'll maybe know what I'm talking about. But for example, I was talking about in one of my previous vlogs, if you play to win instead of playing for your ego, and I was playing Tetris and this hit me, and it's a perfect example in my vlog, and I don't think I remember it, but basically I was playing Tetris and I realized I was playing to get an optimal output, right? I wasn't actually playing for speed, and then I realized the objective of what I'm playing for, I don't even really know, and so I had to change completely my objective as I was playing Tetris. And then I realized actually what's going on is I was playing for my ego. Playing for the optimal output is playing for my ego. It goes back to that ego theory. It goes back to that outplay principle where I know the optimal move. My gameplay is theoretically optimal, but I'm not actually getting the results. And it doesn't really matter if I'm getting the results or not. What matters is that win-win situation that I'm forcing myself into, where if I can do it optimally, then I either get the win because the opponent's worse than me, or I can at least do it optimally and it looks like I can beat an opponent who's better than me, right? I can get that win-win scenario where that's made up. That's false. A player who's really smart, who's playing not for their ego, but playing to win, they would intentionally not do something that's theoretical optimal, right? They would do something that's realistically real-time optimal. And maybe not even optimal, because it changes. On PB pace, what is optimal? It goes out the window, right? In super nervous in tournament, those words optimal don't exist anymore. And so I realized there's a huge open world out there. And this is what natural gameplay is. Basically, it's binding everything in the game around what you think you can do, right? Instead of what you can do based on results. And it's getting rid of that optimal idea. And it comes into this concept that I call natural gameplay, and it's kind of difficult to express in terms of words, because it is a concept. Another like really important aspect of it is the idea that you can only do what you can do, right? So if you actually do something and you lose 20 seconds, like in a speed run, you completely mess it up and then you lose 20 seconds in that screen. That's like if you get rid of the ego aspect, what happens is that just becomes a solution for that room. It's just a really bad solution. It's like a 20-second time loss, right? Most people like would get anxious, and if you're doing it naturally, right? Like that's an aspect of how you play the game. That's actually the truth is this explanation. It's too convoluted. Plus, it actually ties into a different idea I just came up with. I call it macro natural gameplay, and I have another name for it called self theory, which basically the idea is, and it's a different video, but it's like the extension. It's not, or it's like the application of natural gameplay. Because for me, a lot of the stuff in Link to the Past, for example, that I was finding, like I would go into cold stare and I'd always get nervous and I'd always mess it up, and I'm like, this doesn't work, right? I always thought, oh, maybe it could work. It's the best way to do cold stare. I get it sometimes, right? I know I get it in practice. Like I know I can do it. Well, that's just not true, because the problem is, I'm anxious when I go into cold stare, right? My strats and my movement has to be completely recreatable, has to be completely, I have to be able to do it under any circumstance. That's really important. You know what? I'm going back to my my thought earlier, because I was saying something like, if you do a room and you lose 20 seconds on it and it's like a huge failure, like you messed up a lot. This is kind of natural gameplay in a sense. Is the idea is like that actually 20-second time loss is a solution for the room. And so what happens is you can buy, proof of doing it. You can do it naturally, which is really key. And I think another reason like natural gameplay is so powerful for me, much more so than like almost any of my other ideas, is because I was able to practice, find real solutions instantly in practice. I was able to bind my understanding of movement in a speed game around something finally, because again, this question, well, what is optimal? If theoretical optimal doesn't apply at all, what is optimal, right? Because whatever is the best is by definition optimal. So what exactly is optimal? And for me, natural gameplay, it found a binding for that. And so I would go into a room and I'd be like, you know what, I can't quite do this naturally. I can't quite do this room, this interaction completely comfortably. And so I would redo it. I would find different ways to do it. And in a speed game, it's real interesting because you get a frame counter. And so there's probably 2 or 3 different ways to do a screen optimally, but then look at it naturally. There's probably 15 different ways to do it, and they all vary in frames. And then you got to think about the PB pace run, the big one, the big run. Again, those 15 different frames, those 15 different ways. It all really matters. And then also you got to think about how punishing it is. So for me, in a speed run in Link to the Past, I was instantly finding movement stuff across the board, and that's changing so much of what I do just by thinking. Just by understanding. I wasn't even practicing, but then I started practicing, of course. Again, going back to my example where you lose 20 seconds, the point is, if you do something comfortably, right, even if you don't want to do it, that's basically, and I don't want to, because now you'd be defining what you could do by a result, but basically what you just did, what you're doing is comfortable. And so the point is, if you look at that and you kind of apply it to the whole run and kind of apply it in a broader sense. And thinking about it, it's real weird because the results are the most important thing. In fact, they're the only thing you can really base your skill on, right? I mean, results is objective truth, right? But then I'm saying don't base what you can do based on results. But I'm thinking about it, it's not a contradiction because it's what you think you can do, right? You don't base that on results, but then the results are still objective. So that's kind of an interesting little non-contradiction there that almost looks like a contradiction. And actually, that makes me think, going back to what I'm saying, that is true. If you do something, that's what you can do, right? Just by definition, everything you've done is what you could do objectively. And honestly, guys, I'm falling apart here. I'm trying real hard because I know there's something out there, and I'm trying real hard, and I can't figure it out. but it has something to do with the fact that like everything you can do is just by definition natural, and so might as well just figure out the best things, right, of that natural. Like it's already defined as natural, so just embrace it instead of embracing something else, or instead of ignoring it, instead of rejecting it, just embrace what is natural. Maybe that's what I'm looking for. Everything you're doing is already natural just by definition of the fact that you did it. And so don't do something that has like this huge variance of loss. Natural is what is the binding principle. It's not theoretical optimal. It's not whatever all these other ideas. People come up with so many of these ideas that they bind their gameplay around. And I'm saying bind your gameplay around what's natural. Anyway, the reasons this is like really key to do, and actually it'll benefit you in the long run, especially if you're wrong. And I think that is so key, because if you're wrong and you bind your gameplay around what you think you can do, and you're wrong, guess what's going to happen? You're going to fail, right? But I'm saying that's a good thing. You want that to happen, because there's three situations. There's always three interactions that can happen. Failing is it's a positive one in a negative direction, or maybe it's a negative cause, or it's a negative effect in a positive direction. And so the other one is succeeding, right? Which is and then there's that gray area where, and it's not even a gray area between the two, but it's when you fail the setup and you don't get either or a win or a loss, and you really don't know what to do with that. And so what you have to do with that middle one is try again, and that's kind of what confidence. If you look at confidence, you think about that stuff a lot. That's kind of similar to that, where the idea is to intentionally get out there. Like if your gameplay is bad, and that's really this is why it's so important. Because if you're bad at the game, like your skill's low, well, you should fail, right? I mean, that's what skill is. And so I'm saying fail based on your skill. Don't fail based on the setup of the skill. Yeah, that's not the best explanation, but look at it in terms of like a one frame trick. There's a one frame trick halfway through a run. It's the entire run is based on it. It's hit or miss. You either get a really good run or a really bad run. So there's three things that can happen. You can succeed on it, run's great. You can fail and miss the one frame trick, run sucks. Or you can fail the setup before the one frame trick, and that's that middle one where I'm saying don't do that. And that's exactly what ego theory is. It's when the player completely drops the setup entirely, and then they don't even fail based on their ideas. It's not their ideas that are failing, right? And so I'm saying if you want to fail, like you're going to fail, obviously. And actually it's the same reason if you do fail, not the setup, but you fail the trick itself. What happens is you say, hey, you know what, that was bad, I can change it. Oh, you know what, I'm not doing this right, I can change it. I don't know that this is important, I can change it. It's not super hard. If you fail that setup for that one frame trick, you don't know if you're good at the trick, you don't know if you're bad at the trick, you don't know if you need to change your timing for it. Like you don't know what's going on, like what do I need to do? And so that's what natural gameplay is. It's do what you can do, like what you think you can do, not based on the results. What you're comfortable with, and then try to grow from that. And so like the whole idea, here's why it's so powerful, is because if you're wrong and you fail, you think about it and then you go back. If you're right, you'll succeed, you'll win at zero anxiety in the gameplay, right? It'll be reflexive winning. It's free. It's natural. It's natural is the point of the terminology, but that's like very powerful, because that's actual skill. That's what skill is. I see a lot of people try to force themselves to win situations, and it does work. It can work. But what I think is happening is that at a low level, you have two people with highly corrupt gameplay. They're highly playing for their ego. They're not playing to win. Both of their gameplay is so corrupt. They keep both failing that setup. But what's happening is there's so many game interactions, and one player is still better than the other player. And so through the good game interactions, the better player usually will win. Is the key there. And then also, I think there's more variance though, but it is for, maybe there's similar reasons. I'm not sure. I guess that would come down to the game itself. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think of my this new idea I came up with called natural gameplay. Let me know if you disagree with it, you agree with it. Also, let me know about the quality settings. I'm a little nervous. I'm not gonna lie, but Let me know if the audio, the video sounds good in the comments, and then what you think, because I'm usually outside, I'm usually vlogging, and I decided that I wanted to change my quality a little bit, so I'm experimenting with new things. I'm trying new things out and trying to find my groove, trying to find my natural groove making these videos, right? Not try to force anything. So anyway, guys, I'll see you later. Thanks for watching.